As you can see, it says 6 minutes here, like 7 minutes, but like there is a beginning part where I was kind of messing up with the phone because it's weird because I'm recording on the phone I usually use, so it's kind of weird. But this trial is for the difference of salt, and so you can see this one has absolutely no salt on it. This one has a tiny bit of salt, if you can kind of see, and this one has a lot of salt. And basically what I did is I put vinegar and I placed it in that bin over there. I covered all 3 of these iron pieces, there's still more over there, and I set a timer for 5 minutes, and then after 5 minutes I took it out and I placed it on these, I want to say napkins, yes, napkins, and 3 drops of hydrogen peroxide, and the salt varies between each, and we will see. For the salt one, like the very salty one, you can kind of see like maybe hints of orange, but maybe not. It might be just a shadowing. For this one, you can see like clearly there's like something white growing on it. Like not growing, but it's like showing up. I want to see. The light kind of looks weird. It's the light, yeah. Yeah, the part of it is just the hydrogen peroxide and the reflection of it. Let me record it. But as you can see, they're actually reacting relatively slowly. Like I did an experiment trial a while ago. I'm gonna peel this back. I think just a little bit of it's fun. I'm peeling off the top layers of salt because I added a bit too much and I can't see anything. At the beginning, I was just going to have 1 round of hydrogen peroxide, and so for the normal it'd be 3 drops. But I'm considering, because then I did 2 rounds because I noticed it wouldn't show up, and for my test trials, sometimes it would take like 2 or 3 rounds of hydrogen peroxide before anything starts like happening. So I'm not sure, maybe it's the preparation. Like some videos have them showing up pretty quickly, relatively quickly, while others have it really slowly. But as you can see, I'm gonna 1 drop, 2 drops, 3 drops. As you can probably tell, I'm not sure it's that clear. It's kind of blurry, but you can kind of tell there's something in the middle that's going on. And this one is clearly getting a bit whiter, and so is this one, but I'm just gonna add a bit more. You can kind of see the textures on it. I'm kind of waiting for it to bubble because I remember that in my, so I've done like a few test trials just to figure out like how it works in general, and I'll grab them real quick. Hello, I've done a few test trials and these were the results. They were actually relatively successful, and I'm trying to replicate them. As you can see, like, well, this third one, some of it's falling off, as you see. Like this one I didn't add any sealer on, so it's kind of falling apart right now. But these 2, they're kind of shiny because it's sealer, but you can see it's like really dark brown color, like it's really rusty feeling. So yeah, the white that you see kind of developing over here, that's kind of what's happening over here as well. This is, it starts off turning white and then it starts turning brownish. For these 2, they started bubbling, and like you get these like really big bubbles, and hopefully we'll see them here because I didn't exactly record that process because it was just testing. So we will see. I'll come back to you if something happens. We are at around 14 minutes plus a few seconds that technological issues at the beginning prevented me from actually calculating, but it's fine because we're calculating within each trial and they're happening simultaneously, so if there's any obvious changes, I should be able to tell. And as you can see, this one, a lot of white stuff. this recording, it's kind of reflecting. You can kind of see like the white on the metal on some parts of it, and this one, there's not a lot to see because there is a lot of salt there, but there is stuff going on. And for this one, there's less white. There's still a little bit of white developing, but there's also a bit of brown showing up at the middle of the letters, and this one also has a bit of brown showing up. And yeah, 15 seconds plus a few seconds, and we'll wait for the next report. Adding some more hydrogen peroxide to hopefully kickstart the process a bit more. I'm adding 3 drops at a time. 3, 1, 2, 3. Here we go. Oh, the color is showing up a bit more now. This one, I don't know what's happening with this one. I really honestly can't tell. I was expecting the salt one to show up, have the color show up a lot faster, but I mean, okay. One minor problem to it is I can't really see the color because a lot of the salt is blocking it, so I'm not sure if it's just, it looks like it's a bit like purplish gray in the middle, but again, it could just be the salt. No, I see something. Yeah, there's definitely something that's happening. And I noticed like this part looks more purple gray, while the other 2 parts look more yellow. But I also noticed like the napkin beside it is yellow, so I'm wondering if it's the salt, because usually with water you have like the tendency of water to stay together, like the water molecules to stay together, so those are keeping like the colors in, and I'm wondering if the salt, like the structure of it, it's breaking the water molecules apart so they don't stay together as much, which is something that could be possible. I'll have to do a bit more research on it, but 17 minutes plus a few seconds. We'll see. Oh, quick check-in. It's almost at 19 minutes. I keep on wanting to say seconds, but 19 minutes. And I removed the salt from the side because I wasn't sure if that's affecting the experiment at all. So, I mean, it's not directly affecting it from the aspect of chemistry, so it should be fine. And for this one, as you can see, or maybe kind of see, I forgot the lighting. Oh well, I'm so sorry. As you can kind of see, it's turning a bit yellow, but there's also a lot of the white stuff that's going on. This one, a little bit of white, but it's definitely turning yellow, and there's definitely a lot of bubbles showing up. And if this experiment is similar to previous experiments that I've done on this topic, then theoretically the liquid part should start getting a lot more unliquidy in a way. It starts getting a little bit sticky and the bubbles rise up, and we'll see. It's kind of hard to explain right now, but it should happen to at least one of the trials, so we'll see. So now we are almost at the 30-minute mark. Not exactly, not quite, but if you can see here, I'll describe it to you just in case it's not that clear on screen, but the white is starting to build up. It's like, from what I'm seeing at least, it's creating like little hills and bumps, and there's bubbles in them, and they're like slowly rising and popping. And for this one, more color has developed, and it's spread out more evenly, and there's also a lot of like floating bubbles in the middle. And this one, not sure what's happening. I think it's because the hydrogen peroxide keeps on getting taken away, I guess, by the salt, so I'm not exactly sure. Something could be happening under there that I might be able to see later on. There is like some gray parts, like gray purplish kind of stuff that seems like it's developing beneath the places that there is a lot of salt, like especially like the middle. You see like the C or the circle, and like one of the other sides, like those places don't have a lot of salt, so it looks normal, kind of similar to what it was at the beginning. But like the middle places look like it's turning a bit purple, but it could just be imaginary. So, and oh god, the focus of this camera. Okay, yeah, and on the sides you can see like those colors. They're not colors. I guess they're water stains in a way, but they're like yellowish water stains. Like, yeah, this camera, oh, kinda like right in the middle, a bit out of focus. There's like that circlish line, yellow stain on napkin. As you can see, we are at the 35-minute mark and not a lot has changed. There's some more color in it, some more yellowish parts of it, but here I notice, if you kind of see, the liquid part is starting to get less liquid. It sounds really weird, but it's starting to get more sticky and starchy. And so you can see the bubbles are rising actually above the liquid, and it's kind of pulling some of that sticky substance up. It's not really sticky, I guess it's just like part of the hydrogen peroxide is like drying out, but it's also still liquid. So, but if you can see, if it can focus, you can see like the bubble is pulling the hydrogen peroxide up a little bit. It's pulling the upper layer up. So yeah, 36 minutes. Another update in probably a while. I'll probably update after there's obvious changes with one or more of these. As you can see, we are almost at the 1 hour mark. We are at 59 minutes right now. Oh, I'm gonna turn the lights. Okay, cool. Never mind, I'm gonna turn the lights. I'm turning it off, sorry. Okay, so we have the salt, relatively the same. It looks like, you might be able to see, you might not, but it looks like there's like a pink purple cast developing behind some of the salt. Could be shadow, doesn't feel like shadow, but the thing I'm curious about is if it's the salt that's changing color, if it's on the metal, because if it's on the salt, once we take the salt off, then it would be gone, but if it's on the metal, it should stay on a bit more. And this is the tiny bit of salt. As you can see, like most of the hydrogen peroxide is like being pulled up by the bubbles, and there's a lot of white. There's not a lot of like brownish orange color. There's some at the edges, but there's a lot more white than the rust color that we want. And for here, you can see it's like yellowish, brownish. The lighting is not that great, but you can kind of see it, and the bubbles are also rising, and it's having a similar effect, but there's less of it because I'm guessing it has something to do with the salt and maybe like drying out the hydrogen peroxide faster. I'll have to do also a bit more research on that, but yeah, yellow bubbles, we'll see. We will see. It's like, oh yeah, 1 hour. Okay. Cool. Catch you up later. We are now at the 1 hour 21 minute mark. Salt still doing its thing, maybe, who knows. There's some white line, like, yeah, you can see it. There's some white lines that are developing. I'm curious what that is. I think that's also similar with this one, where there's also like, it kind of looks like fiber. I don't know, like, yeah. But also the bubbles are rising a bit more. The bulbs here are also rising, as well as a clear yellow color that is appearing. There's a lot of bubbles on this one, but there, at least from what I can see, there's not a lot of white lines. But with these two, there are. So I'm wondering how the salt affects the white lines. 1 minute 22, almost 23. As you can see, we are almost at the 2 hour, okay, we're not exactly at the 2 hour mark. We're at the 1 hour 46 minute mark. And this mess over here is going on. The white web-like, fiber-like, string-like creature is here with a lot of salt. The white string, sorry, my finger, and the sub white string with some bubbles is here with some salt, and we have the bubbles, a lot of bubbles, and there's the coloring in the background. Okay, as you can see, the bubbles are definitely rising up above the water. Oh, that one just popped. Yes, the bubble. There's a lot of bubbles, as you can see. One hour 47. We are now at the 2-hour 20 mark, and as you can see, most of the hydrogen peroxide has basically dried out. For the salt, it's still a lot of salt left because we didn't move that, but there's also still the white string-like features. There's that also here, but it's a lot more clumped up, and there's also a lot of bubbles that are tiny bubbles there, but a lot of it is just the white. And over here we have the absolutely no salt, and there's, as you can see, a lot of dried out bubbles, and there's hints of colors of yellow. And so far I've done 6 rounds of 3 drops of hydrogen peroxide each round, and I just kind of want to like try that again because I'm wondering like if it'll affect anything. 2, 3. Over here we also have 1, 2, 3, and over here we have 1, 2, 3. I'm hoping that does something because I remember like the first for like most of the times that I'm doing this, like you have to like test it out. You have to add hydrogen peroxide a lot, multiple times. You can't just add a lot at once. It's like every time you add on new ones, it's like affecting it somehow. So we will wait and see. We're at the 2-hour mark, and yeah. So we are almost at the 3-hour mark, and here we have the salt. Nothing much has really changed, which is not surprising. And for here we have the tiny bits of salt. Also, it's okay. There's some parts of it over here, if you can see. The lighting isn't that great, but there's some parts over here which are turning a bit brown compared to the rest of it. But it's still a little part of it. And for this one, no salt, bubbles. There's a big bubble over here, and gathering around the bubble is a lot of that rust color that we want. And I'm assuming that over time, more bubbles will grow, and after a while, once they settle down, that will be when the rust color comes. So I will have to leave that in place for a while, and I will start on my next experiment because 3 hours is a long time to wait. And I should have started on the other experiments, but I didn't have another timer, but I'll just figure it out. Right now I'll be setting up my second experiment because it waited basically 3 hours because I wanted to, like, since I only have one timer, I thought it'd be easiest to do one experiment at a time, but that's not time efficient. So I'm going to start my second experiment, which will be testing out hydrogen peroxide and different amounts of hydrogen peroxide and how it affects the final product. And here I'm setting up the napkins, just everything, just so that I don't know why I set up the napkins. I think it's just to collect the liquid that's going to come off from the hydrogen peroxide. So we still have a little bit of vinegar left. I think that's enough. That should be enough. I'll pop 1 in, 2, and 3. Oh, that went upside down. I'm gonna move that over. That did not work. Stop. Okay, 3. Awesome. We have all 3 iron pieces in here, and I will open. Okay, I will look at the 5 minute. So right now, 2 hours 55 minutes 30 seconds, and that was about. I'll probably go till. Yeah, I'll go till 3 hours. That's 5 minutes. I will make sure that everything's covered. All the parts of iron are covered. Let me move that over for a sec. Should cover everything. Yeah, this is the timer from the last experiment, which we have over here behind the vinegar bottle. It's slowly, like, the one with hydrogen peroxide and no salt is slowly coming together. Now I'm curious. I wonder if I should add salt or not for the other experiments, because I originally had it as a bit of salt for like the normal experiments, but yeah, I think I'll keep to the bit of salt and 3 drops. Yeah. And for the hydrogen peroxide, since I'm testing out the amount of hydrogen peroxide it will take, well, at least how it will affect the final experiment, I will be doing 2 drops of hydrogen peroxide, 4 drops, and 6 drops. And as you might have seen in the previous experiment, we're using a dropper, so it's a lot easier because some of them, they sell it in big bottles and can't really drop for that. So you can also mix it at home if you want. If you want to just mix it and measure it out, you can also do that. But I'm just using simply dropping drops of hydrogen peroxide. And keep in mind that I will probably be doing multiple rounds of this, because I've noticed from the last experiment that usually one round nothing really happens. I'm not sure if it's just like the way that I've been setting up my experiments, or maybe like the specific materials and their specific brand that's causing this to happen. But my chemical reaction is taking a bit of time. So yeah, if you want to try this at home, like, I think you'll just have to like try it out and see, because I've seen videos where they have like really fast reaction where it's like suddenly rust, but maybe it's like different metals, like different types of iron. I'm not sure, because like not all iron is like the same. So there's that to keep in mind. We are at 58 minutes, 2 more minutes. Yeah, I'll just wait here. I'll prepare. Yes. No. Yeah. You might be able to, oh, you won't be, obviously you won't be able to see this, but whenever I notice every time we have the iron in the, I need something to prop it up. I'm so sorry. Wait a second. This is good. Every time we have iron in the vinegar, there's always tiny bubbles on the surface of the iron, and it's just floating around. And like, maybe like, yeah, one of them, the bubbles are kind of floating off because I was just moving it around, but it sticks to the iron. And I think there's research behind why we need to put in white vinegar, distilled white vinegar, is because it breaks down the specific molecules of the iron inside like the surface part of it, so that the hydrogen peroxide and salt can, I guess, get into the iron easier, creating this rusting effect. Because the rusting effect is basically iron but exposed to a lot of water and oxygen, but acid speeds up the process and hydrogen peroxide speeds up the process along with other stuff. And yeah, we are 59 minutes, 30 more seconds. I'll probably take it to 3 hours, like 10 seconds, because a little bit longer wouldn't hurt, because we're just testing within each of these experiments. So we'll just be looking at the specific differences between each of these iron pieces. So some 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Take these out. cool. We have that out of the way, and I will be getting a pinch of salt for each of these iron pieces. Don't want to spill the salt too much. Oh, okay. I grabbed a lot of salt, but I'll just be sprinkling a little bit of it on. This should be good. The most important part of this, like, how I've been measuring my salt, like, I haven't been doing specifically how much, I've just been roughly estimating, but like, obviously no salt is absolutely no salt, but like a little bit, I'm like covering around a third of the surface area, and a lot of salt for the previous experiment just covering the whole thing. And so we have, let's say this is 2 drops. 1, 2. Oh, that's color starting coming in. It's a little black. You might not be able to see it. Mosquito. 4 drops for this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6 drops for this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You might not be able to see it. Might not be able to, oh wow, this reaction is a bit faster. I'll bring in the camera a bit closer. So you can see just a while ago, I added hydrogen peroxide onto my experimental iron pieces, and it was at 3 hours, around 3 hours, 10 seconds. And you can see this one specifically, light, is it enough? This one specifically, it's starting to have like this black mark on the inside, and the rest of it's starting to turn a little white compared to like the outside parts, and it's going. And so is this part. There's some white that's starting to develop on the top of the iron piece. So is this one also a little bit white? We'll see if there's really any big differences, because I think the point of it is just to cover the whole entire surface. So I don't believe there will be that much difference, but we will see actually. There's white, white, and white. 2 drops, 4 drops, and 6 drops. And as I was mentioning, we will be doing multiple rounds of these quantities of droplets for hydrogen peroxide, and we'll see how it affects the final product. Currently 3:25. I've added a second round of hydrogen peroxide for my hydrogen peroxide test. I've also added 3 drops to each of my previous tests that's also going on. This is the salt test experiment, and this is one with a lot of salt, some salt, and no salt. And as you can see, there's not a lot of rusting development for the really salty ones, and there's a little bit for the somewhat salty ones, but there's also like the white lines. And for no salt at all, there's no white lines, but there is some rust developing. There's some spots of rust, and there's also that big bubble that popped a while ago, and we will continue and see. Almost at the 4-hour mark. Technically it's the 1-hour mark, almost 1 hour. It's we started at, I wrote down the time, we started at 3 hours 20 seconds. Yes, 3 hours 20 seconds. Oh, YouTube. We started at 3 hours 20 seconds, so about 40, 50, 60 minutes, almost. Yeah, almost 1 hour for this hydrogen peroxide experiment. And this is the experiment with 2 drops each round, 4 drops each round, and 6 drops each round. And I have done 3 rounds so far. I just did the 3rd round about a few minutes ago. I'm gonna say a few minutes ago. And I think the main difference that I noticed is like for the 2, there's like less of that white swirly thing, and also some sides of it aren't being really covered that much. There's like that black part, and I think the black parts, I think when I was noticing there was black parts here for a while before it got covered by the white. And so I think it goes from black to white and then to the rust color. And you can see there's that swirly design. More of it with a bit of bubbles. And even more of it. Basically, I think basically the 6 drops and the 4 drops are pretty similar as of now. The only difference is, like, I know intuitively that this was 6 drops and this was 4 drops, but if you were to mix it up and ask me like which one was 6 drops and which one was 4 drops, I would not be able to tell. And so 3:58, almost 4-hour mark for that one. And for that one, we've done 7 rounds already. And let's see. So salt, yeah, that's probably not successful. Maybe like a few 10 more rounds or so. The ones with a little bit salt, it's starting to grow a bubble and it's starting to rust a bit. And for this one with absolutely no salt, you can see there's a few bubbles. There's also a few bubbles that were there but popped, and there's also some dots of rust. And I think as time goes on, more rust colors will develop and then eventually settle down to get our desired effect. I am at my 3rd experiment. I just placed down the hydrogen peroxide, and this experiment is testing the amount of time that's spent in the vinegar solution. And basically I have, this one's 10 seconds, this one's 1 minute, yes, it's 1 minute, this one's 5 minutes, and this one is 10 minutes. And we will see how it goes. And I noticed right away that when I was placing down the salt, I take like a pinch of salt for each of them, and I noticed like for the ones that were placed in the solution less amount of times, the salt stayed more solidified, while for the 10-minute one, I noticed when I was pressing it down, it just sort of melted in a way into the metal. So there is that. Not sure if it affects anything, but there are some things showing up. A lot of white for this one, a lot of white for that one. There's a lot of white for all of them. I guess we'll just have to see. There isn't much of a difference right now, and we'll come back. It's been about 13 hours for, at least for the original solution, the original test for the salt. Yes, this is the salt test, and as you can see, no salt, some salt, a lot of salt. Right now you can tell, I placed them in order, but you can also tell because the ones with salt have that white distinct line on them, while the one without salt added on doesn't really have that much. There's a little bit at the corners, but it isn't as prominent compared to the other ones. And as you can see, the one without the salt, the one with the salt has begun developing rust, which is good, but it's more so in the corner, while this one's everywhere and this one's more on the middle. And for this test, this one is the hydrogen peroxide amount. We have 2 drops per round, 4 drops per round, and 6 drops per round. And I'm curious because I was actually thinking that the more hydrogen peroxide you put at once should theoretically give you more rust, but this isn't the case. This isn't the case with the experiment so far, and we will be seeing how these develop. But it seems like for both tests, the one with the middle amount seems better in terms of like just quality and the desired effect compared to the other ones. So we'll see. We'll see the end results soon. It is currently 8:38 and I stopped the timer because it is going overnight, and this is overnight for a few of the tests. And so we have the first test, and this one is testing the salt and how salt amount might affect the final results. And as you can see, I think it's clearly noticeable that even though the same amount of hydrogen peroxide is being added to all 3 of these trials, the ones without any salt, or the ones with less salt, is a lot more watery consistency compared to the one with salt. As you can see, like for this one, there's a lot of the white spiral things as explained before, and it's not sure if it's showing up, but it's clearly drier compared to this trial, which is a little bit salt, and this trial, which has no salt at all. And for these, we have the different amounts of hydrogen peroxide. We have 2 drops per round. I've done multiple rounds. For this test, I've done 8 rounds so far, and this is over the time period. And it's just whenever I see it's completely dried or like nearly dried, I usually put the amount of hydrogen peroxide for all 3 of them. And this is 2 drops, this is 4 drops, and this is 6 drops per round. And as you can see with this one, it's clearly dried because there's less hydrogen peroxide being added, and you can see some flakes of the rust color over here along with the white swirly stuff. And the middle one is 4 drops. And for this one, it's still a little bit watery in consistency, but there's a lot more rust developing and the color is there. And for 6 drops, I was actually surprised. I expected the 6 drops to have more rust color because you're adding more hydrogen peroxide, which is an acid. So it should theoretically speed up the process, but this isn't what's happening right now. It looks like maybe adding too much hydrogen peroxide actually prevents the rust from occurring, because I'm guessing this is a possibility because it's not drying because you're adding too much of hydrogen peroxide at once. And you can also see that there's tiny bits of bubbling appearing, and curious because maybe the rust color will come after it dries, so we'll see about that. And so over here we have our 3rd experiment. This experiment is the most recent one. We started adding the hydrogen peroxide at 3:05 a.m. this morning. So it's been about 5 hours, which is still pretty long. So we have this is testing the vinegar and the amount of time we placed in the vinegar. And so we have 10 seconds. Yes, 10 seconds. Over here, some rusting colors, some bubbling, pretty normal. 1 minute, less rusting and more tiny bubbles, and there's a lot of that white stuff developing as well as over here. And for 5 minutes, we also have a little bit of rust developing. It's pretty similar to the 1 minute from what I currently see, and that's just observations. And also, like a quick observation, another one is that right after we put in the hydrogen peroxide along with the salt, there's this black thing that develops around the place that's being hydrogen peroxided, I guess. And so you can see at the edges where there's a little bit of hydrogen peroxide, there's a little bit of that black, but it's not really showing up for inside the hydrogen peroxide because possibly the white, whatever that white stuff is covering it. And then after that white stuff, okay, wait, where was I? Okay, yeah. I think the white stuff is developing after so we have the iron, and then it turns a little bit black. Maybe it's like some sort of stain or something like that. I'll have to do a bit more research. Afterwards, it develops that white consistency. Same as without any vinegar, like without any salt, there's still that white consistency, but it's a lot less. So I'm curious if the salt has anything to do with it. Maybe the salt reacting with hydrogen peroxide is what causes the white stuff. I keep on saying it's stuff, but it sounds so weird calling it just stuff. Okay, so we have the 10 minutes. The 10 minutes is far more, I would say, successful, because in my past trials, let me grab some examples. So in my past trials, I've actually placed the vinegar in for a really long time. Okay, these are a few of my past trials as over here. So, well, I've done a lot of layering, like different layers for the, yeah. So you can see it's a lot more darker. It's like way darker in consistency. This one is completely dark. This one, kind of dark, because I haven't done that much layering. But basically, what I've noticed is, okay, so my phone just ran out of storage, so I had to delete a few videos from my photo feed, which is really depressing and sad. But okay, back to the science part, or observations at least. I've noticed every time we've got this dark color, it always starts with this bubbly consistency. It's this bubble, but it's thicker. It's like starch. That's not a right way. It's kind of imagining blowing a bubble gum. This is kind of what it looks like. So it's just like bubble gum consistency, like when you blow it out, not when you chew on it. But basically, after this thing, usually like the bubbles die down, and then the color sinks into the iron. But the one thing about this trial in particular is that the bubbles are white and clear, relatively clear compared to the previous ones. Usually I have these bubbles that have really rusty colors, but this time it's not rusty colors at all. So I'm wondering, like, maybe it's the different trials that I've done. I probably have to do a few more trials, not a few more trials, a few more rounds of the hydrogen peroxide before it gets this rust color. Like, maybe out, because with other ones there isn't as much bubbly consistency compared to this one. So I'm thinking, I have one iron piece left, so I'm thinking I'll be placing this iron piece in vinegar for a really long time and seeing what happens. I think the bubbly consistency will appear even more, so we'll see. We will see. And these are my experiments so far. There's still one left, and after that, oh, one note. So basically in the beginning I was planning on recording the reaction time, reaction speed. Unfortunately, I can't really do that because it takes so long, and how to even stop, because you don't know, like, at what point do you stop the timer, because sure, it might start developing a little bit of iron, but as you can see, in some of them it starts developing a lot faster, but then at the end there isn't that much rust coloring there, so you never really know. And a lot of these are really similar, and like the rust color appears after a really long time. So I'm keeping these video records, so there's the timestamps. I should have like timestamps in around by the minutes, and basically during that time you can just look at each experiment and compare it for yourself. Experiment. See, it's like the bubbly consistency, but it's also like, it's bubbles, but it's growing. And oh, and one other thing, it's kind of funny. So I had these bubbles on for the past few like testing. I didn't record these, the making of these, but for the past few testings I also had the bubbles, and they're rust colored. Compared to this isn't really rust colored, so we'll see. For these bubbles, I was trying to pop them because I had a toothpick by my side, because I don't know, I was just bored, and I was trying to pop it, and like some of the bubbles didn't pop. It wasn't like normal bubbles in a way, like not liquidy bubbles. It's more like half solid, half liquid bubbles, because sometimes it's sticking. Like once you like put the toothpick in, it's just stuck there. Well, I mean, you can take it out, but it just didn't pop. So just another interesting observation I had during the experiment. Oh yeah, and also, as you can see, I'm handling these without having to worry about the rust part falling off, and that is because I use this. I'm pretty sure, okay, so these are the things you put into like the corners so you can keep it so that, to be honest, I don't really know what these are doing, but we just went to a hardware store and then we just bought it because it looked like it might work, and it did. It kind of does. It takes a while to dry though, if I can find an example. I was just trying another a while ago, but it is not here. That is weird. Wait, was I handling? No. What? One of my test trials just disappeared. Sounds fun. Yeah, I had a test trial somewhere, probably hiding, and it's just like, it's white for a really long time until it dries and it becomes kind of clear. Oh wait, is this? Oh yeah, like, never mind. This one is the test trial because the backside hasn't been solidified. I haven't added the white stuff, as you can see over here. Maybe I have to autofocus now. What is this? Okay, as you can see here, there's that white stuff, and okay, the white over here is actually the white from the rust thing. But the white over here, it's just the glue drying. And the problem is like this consistency. Let me show you. It's this consistency, so I'm not sure if it will work for the final product. Maybe I can get some of it out. See, it has this consistency. and it's kind of not liquid. Okay, it's not technically solid, so technically it's liquid. But literally can't delete videos, but I have to because my storage ran out. Basically, if you don't have that clear coat that I was talking about, iron, rust, finger, touch, iron, rust on finger. Yeah, pretty much. Bye. Before. So I just redid all the experiments. I added the extra round of drops, and we are heading out for the weekend. So I will come back after the weekend and see how it's doing. I will be expecting the newer experiments to have less rust compared to older ones because there's been more rounds of hydrogen peroxide being added, so that's just one thing that's going to be noted, but basically it. Oh, and right now, it should be, let me check the time. It is currently 10:02, so it's been about 2 hours since my last update. Almost 2 hours, okay.